Hello class, welcome to our second lesson dealing with solving two-step equations. On our first lesson in section 3.5, we went through the basics about how to make sure that you're solving two-step equations in the correct order. Remember, it's PEMDAS backwards. Think about wrapping versus unwrapping the present, for example. Today we're going to focus on a little bit more of those things and add a few twists to it to make sure that we can get everything solved correctly. The first two questions should be similar to what you saw in the previous class. Okay, so you notice here I got 3x plus 2 equals 17. So you want to get rid of plus 2 first because it's least important. Subtract 2 on both sides of the equal sign. I get 3x equals 15 divided by 3 on both sides, and I'll get x equals 5 or 5 equals x. It doesn't matter which side the variable is on when you answer that question. On the second one, subtract 24 on both sides. Remember on the right side here, these should both be negative. Then divide by 5, and you should get an answer of negative 12 when you take negative 60 divided by 5. Your work when you're turning things into me should look like that. As you're dealing with these two-step equation questions, you need to show your work. You need to make sure that you're showing your steps. Just having the answer is not going to be good enough when it comes to these scenarios, so make sure that you're showing your work. Now, what some of you have noticed is that it's hard to sometimes show your work digitally or even on paper vertically. Some of you might prefer to show your work horizontally. When you show your work horizontally, what you'll notice here is you have 3x plus 2 equals 17, and you get rid of plus 2 by doing minus 2. Well, instead of writing it vertically like I did here with this minus 2 underneath, which I like to do because it lines up things for me to be able to add and subtract, the other option is you could write it to the right of everything that you have and just do minus 2 on both sides. So notice I have 17 minus 2 here and 3x plus 2 minus 2. 17 minus 2 is 15. The plus 2 minus 2 cancels. So it does the same idea. And then divide by 3 on both sides. Notice I have a line, and then it's the same idea. Okay, I don't say this line equals the next line, so it's not a big running equal sign the whole time. It's still kind of vertical as you're looking at it, but you're showing your work in a more horizontal way. So you may find it helpful as you're looking at those questions to write it horizontally rather than vertically. Next question you'll notice has the distributive property, so you could take this 3 and multiply it in, which is what many of you are used to doing. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times minus 4 is minus 12. And then from there it should just be a two-step equation. Add 12 to both sides, then divide by 3, you get x equals 7. The other option, which I may suggest if it works nicely, is this is 3 times this quantity, x minus 4. To get rid of 3 times something, I could divide by 3 on both sides, and then add 4 to both sides, and it does the same thing. It's just using the order of operations in a slightly different manner to get an answer of x equals 7. Same answer, two ways of solving, both acceptable. I probably wouldn't use this first method here on the left if this, say, was an 8, because 8 divided by 3 all of a sudden is a mixed number or a decimal. It may not work as well. So just a few things to think about and suggestions as you're looking at those questions. Next question deals with adding and subtracting fractions. I'm going to show this one horizontally. So to get rid of plus 2/3, I'm going to subtract 2/3 on both sides. Minus 2/3 come together to be minus 4/3 or negative 4/3. And then n divided by 9. To get rid of divide by 9, I'm going to multiply by 9. And notice I can write that next to it kind of in parentheses. That would work as well. And it cancels out with the 3. And I get an answer of n equals negative 12. Make sure when you're add and subtract fractions, you got to find a common denominator. But when you multiply and divide, you don't need a common denominator. You just need to move things around to make sure that they match up. You may have a few questions that ask you to simplify first. So for example, if I cover up this this part of the equation with the equals 25, it's just 3y minus 8y. And 3y minus 8y would be negative 5y. And then do your steps to solve the equation. So if you have a side that has a lot of stuff on it, you need to combine like terms first and then simplify and then solve the equation that way. Same thing on this one on the right. 0.3 minus 2.8 would be negative 2.5m. Then divide by negative 2.5 on both sides to get your answer of negative 5. But you got to combine like terms first in order to answer that question. Next thing I want to look at is some equations that deal with word problems in real-world situations. Your goal on all of these questions, there's a lot of ways to set them up, a lot of ways to make them look. They should look like a two-step equation piece like what we've done over here. Okay, so they should look something like this or something like this, 5x plus 24 equals negative 36. The goal is that it should be kind of written out in that way, and then you can solve the equation by doing the same thing. The one thing that I would caution you is when you have to explain yourself on questions that are word problems, you have to make sure that you define your variable first. So in this question, we're trying to figure out the number of miles traveled. So x equals the number of miles traveled. You have to explain that to the person reading it before you start solving and setting up equations. Notice here it says the taxi charge is $2.50, so that's $2.50, plus $2 per mile traveled, or for every mile, so that would be 2 times x then. And then the total equals, okay, $10.50, and from here it's just a two-step equation. The opposite of 2.5 is minus 2.5. Subtract that out, I get 2x equals 8, divided by 2 on both sides, and x equals 4. Define the variable, write the equation, show your steps, solve the equation. That's what it should look like when you're solving two-step equation word problems. Next question says to find your bank account balance before you made the deposit. So x equals your original bank account balance. So you triple your bank account balance. That was where the 3x comes from. Then it says you withdraw money to buy groceries, which means you subtract. Withdrawing means you subtract from your account, 127.32. And now my account is overdrawn by 1056. That could be a big problem if you're trying to take money out and you actually overdraft your account. There's fees involved with that and issues with that. But that's why it's a negative 1056, because it's an overdraw above that amount. But then look, this is that same two-step equation idea. First thing I'm going to do is add 127.32 to both sides. Notice this is one of each on the right side, so it's really a subtraction problem. That's why it's 116, not a number like 137. And then to get rid of the 3 out front, any coefficient can be taken care of by dividing by itself, because that would make it a 1. And I divide by 3 and I get 38.92. And that represents $38.92, which is the original account balance. Define the variable, write the equation, show the steps, find the answer. Those are the 4 things that we're looking for as we go through these questions. So make sure that you follow along with that, and that's the expectation as you're dealing with them. Just to review a few things with combining like terms, don't forget if you have multiple variables on the same side of the equation, you can combine them together. So 7x minus 11x can become negative 4x. Notice on this question, when I take 15 divided by negative 4, this does not work out as nicely. A lot of times you can just leave that. Negative 15 over 4 is an improper fraction. You can make that a mixed number or a decimal, obviously. You'll kind of have to use the question to dictate what you want to do. If it's multiple choice, obviously that would kind of solve itself. If it's open-ended, you might have some freedom about what you're looking at. But a lot of times, especially when you're not using higher-level calculators, just leaving it as a fraction would be beneficial at that point. This one has 1.3 minus 2.1 m. Subtract them out, you get negative 0.8 m. Divide it on both sides because that's the coefficient. And you should get m equals a positive 10 because you're taking a negative divided by a negative to get a positive answer. A few things about simplifying, because as soon as we start doing equations, people want to start solving everything. Remember, if a question is simplifying, it should just be combined like terms and leave the answer the way it is. So here, this 3 has to be distributed, so it's 3q minus 30 and then minus 4. 3q you can't do anything with, but minus 30 and minus 4, notice they're both negative. If you do keep, change, it's plus negative 30 and plus negative 4. Since they're both negative, they need to combine together and become negative or subtracting 34. The second one, most common mistake, this is going to show up. Make sure you know about it. Make sure you know what to do with distributing of a negative. Okay, this should be 10 minus 7, but you cannot take 10 minus 7. You need to distribute the 7 into both of these pieces inside the parentheses, but it's not 7, it's minus 7. So you could change that to plus negative 7 and do keep, change in that case, but you need to realize you're distributing the minus and the 7 into both of these. That's why it's negative 7 times 2, negative 14g, negative 7 times negative 4, plus 28. That scenario is one that is missed by a lot of students. That's the scenario you want to make sure that you have figured out, because it's going to keep showing up on tests and assessments and homework questions. So make sure you understand that second question. And if you're not sure about it, make sure you ask someone to understand why you're doing the things in the order they are. It's mainly because of PEMDAS, but also making sure you're distributing a negative sign correctly. Okay, your homework just covers two-step equations, 1 through 5, and then 19 through 37 odd and number 40. Remember, write the original problem, show your steps, find the answer. You work backwards. There should be 2 steps involved in these because we're in two-step equations, unless there's a combined like terms, and then it becomes a one-step equation. Have a good day, everyone.